everyone, welcome or welcome back to the channel. I noticed that there are a few more of you here, specifically from the last time I checked, and I was just talking about how I loved how small this channel is, in the sense that all of the comments are sort of intimate in this, this small space that we can all just kind of interact in. And the served purpose of being exposed to well-articulated honesties has been so invaluable to the comfortability here and the general scope of conversation. It's also just been so nice to see how different perspectives, informed by different contexts and specializations of experience, diverge. And honestly, I just wanted to say that I am so grateful for that. You don't have to agree with me. You don't even necessarily have to agree with me nicely. Although I do always appreciate if you disagree with me without, holding a knife to my throat. But it's not like I'm not going to listen to you. But in any case, even if it's 30 minutes after the video has gone up and you've halfway changed my mind because I read your comment, it's okay. I appreciate the dialogue. So yeah, welcome. If you're new, please feel free to sit down, get comfortable, get some snacks. We'll get you a cushion. Just get comfortable with the rest of us. We don't bite. And tell us your opinion. Tell me your opinion if you have one. Otherwise, if you have a bone to pick with me and you'd rather stand by the door and, give me the side eye, that's fine too. Please feel free to articulate your opinion too. Anyway, I think I have rambled on long enough. Game of Thrones. So I remember how in a traditional school environment, how electric the atmosphere was at the time for adults. Specifically, my middle school grade teachers when the season finale came out. I'd never seen adults in particular so collectively excited, invested, and emotionally destabilized by one show before. Now, obviously, we see it every day, but it was the first time I'd borne witness to an atmosphere like that. Like, for example, right, a Beyonce or Taylor Swift inspired online buzz. It's a particular type of audience engaged with the hype, and what interested me in this case was it was both men and women. The controversies that underpinned the conversation surrounding the show at the time remain, to me, relevant today, as well as an incredible range of topics. You don't have to have watched the show to have, any emotional proximity to the topics we will discuss today. You're more than welcome to do so if you want, but, sit down, stay here for now. Let's begin Game of Thrones.
You could only see the soles of Aegon's feet.
I saw them executing Lannister prisoners in the street. They said they were acting on your orders.
It was necessary.
Necessary? Have you been down there? Have you seen children? Little children burn!
Okay, so the skeletal framework for this episode is, loosely inspired by an article I did find on Us Weekly. I have linked it down below if you want to follow with me, but, it's all up to you. Otherwise, we're going to get into the very popular book series I'm sure you're all very familiar with, A Song of Ice and Fire. George R.R. Martin's epic fantasy saga, A Song of Ice and Fire, debuted with the publication A Song of Ice and Fire, Game of Thrones in 1996. Set in the fictional continents of Westeros and Essos, the series follows a collection of power struggles among noble families, political factions, and supernatural forces vying for control of the Iron Throne and the fate of the realm. The books themselves are renowned for their intricate world building, morally ambiguous characters, and sprawling narrative scope. And guys, full transparency, I have been eating this stuff up since I was 9 years old. I'm thinking of doing a video where I talk about my favorite epic fantasy books, but what's so interesting is that the weight of the series lies partly in its incompletion. In August of 2022, George R.R. Martin admitted to Vanity Fair that he had actually stopped trying to predict when he would finish the series. Despite making progress on the long-awaited sixth installment, The Winds of Winter, Martin acknowledged the, quote, unpredictability of the creative process, which, of course, I think we can all relate to. Writer's block, productivity block, relationship block, what we all understand what he's talking about. I think this entire situation of him just struggling to give us an ending raises the question of, to what extent does a storyteller owe you closure, owe you an ending? Have you ever had that friend who always has some story to tell you, and you're obviously emotionally invested in that story because they're your friend, but for whatever reason, you never get to the end of that story because you're interrupted, or you started the story in person and they promised it. They promised you to finish via text or a call, but your friend is a terrible texter, so that never happens. You know the kind of friend that I am talking about. They deserve, quite frankly, to be thrown out the next convenient window. I'm also that friend. I'm sorry. You can come for my neck later. Moving on. EMILIA Clarke, who plays Daenerys, candidly admitted her discomfort with one of her nude scenes during a November 2019 interview on Dax Shepard's Armchair Expert podcast. We've been doing podcasts for a long while. Now, as a warning, these scenes are graphic, these scenes are plentiful, and they are sometimes unwatchable. She just talked generally about feeling ill-prepared and vulnerable on set, grappling with very understandable uncertainty with regards to expectations and boundaries. But she did talk about how her co-star, Jason Momoa, really came through for protecting her. He made sure that, quote, he would make case that what the dynamic should and shouldn't be was respected on set. And it's just such a testament to someone's loyalty as a friend when they're able to put themselves in a difficult position to protect you. For me though, and I'm gonna be completely honest, it just strikes a different chord when we're talking about an experienced male actor surrounded by other similarly experienced male peers going out of his way to protect a woman's vulnerability. It's not convenient for him, that is. And I say that because I feel like more and more men are understandably leaning into the idea that they need not owe a woman anything, which obviously, if you just on a rational level, that's not wrong. You don't owe anyone necessarily anything just by virtue of their gender. But I think for me, I think just because it is becoming a lot rarer, it sticks out to me, I'm not gonna lie. It's like chivalry, you know, right? If you feel like you are owed an act of chivalry, if you feel like you are entitled for it, you have this arrogant perspective to men owing you their kindness just because you're a woman. The act, whatever it is you get in and of itself, ceases, you know, to be chivalrous because you've just weaponized a cultural expectation against someone else's individual convictions. In my opinion, I don't think you're entitled for anyone to go out of their way for you. And this isn't a gender thing, this is just a people thing. But I think when a person puts themselves in a position of deliberate inconvenience to protect your vulnerable interests because their convictions implore them to care that much about you, and then I think it's important to acknowledge that, because it's not like you're entitled to that consideration. That act becomes admirable, and I think it deserves so much gratitude that I feel like we're lacking today. That's just the way I think. When a friend does something for me that I know that I did not deserve, even if it's just a favor. But when someone cares that much and acts on their convictions, acts on their genuine care for you, I don't let that go unnoticed, you know? A disclaimer for this adjoining section, we do talk about more mature topics of rape and incest. This is the only time you have permission to get up and stand by the door, but don't worry. We will keep your tea and your cushion warm for you, you know, when you get back. But you have been warned. For the rest of us, we good? I hope we're good. Thrones sparked controversy for its depiction of rape scenes throughout the entire series, with the most contentious occurring in season 4. In the episode Breaker of Chains, Lannister is shown raping his twin sister Cersei despite her repeated protests of no and stop. Director Alex Graves controversially described the encounter as, quote, consensual, a stance that many fans vehemently disagreed with. Author George R.R. Martin actually addressed the controversy on his blog. He essentially just emphasized that he did not discuss the TV moment with the directors at the time, David Benioff and Davey Weiss. Martin acknowledged that the scene was always intended to be disturbing, but he expressed regret if, you know, it disturbed viewers for all the wrong reasons. If in a story, as a storyteller, you are intending to indulge someone's uncomfortability, and there are a great many ways to do that, I immediately perk up. I immediately pay attention, because the question I'm wondering is, okay, but why? And I don't mean that in a judgmental way. I genuinely mean, why? I'm curious, you know? What I'm asking is the purpose to make one comfortable with the visual description of the act so repetitive and so explicit that you become numb to it? Or is it that an exposure to the visual preserves your awareness to the extent that you come out of the visual experience more aware of how wrong it was? I would imagine someone like Sam Levinson might have difficulty answering that type of question, but you know, I'm not asking him, I'm asking you. And to start things off, I think I'll tell you what I think first. I think it is egregiously exploitative of the viewer's interest and shock value for your own perverted indulgences. There is an undeniable value making explicit the darker parts in life, which is why I don't actually have an issue with mature content. But for as much as other people have the freedom to make it, and you know, let's be honest, let's all just take a sip of tea and be honest, sort of crap on other people's principles through your messaging in the process, which you have a right to do, by the way, a right that should be protected. That's the uncomfortability and beauty of storytelling. But I also reserve the right to tell you when I don't like it. But moving on, although this section kind of merges with what we were just discussing, the death of Shireen in season 5 remains one of the most unsettling moments for viewers. Burned alive by her own father, the scene prompted widespread shock and raised serious questions about the show's ethical boundaries. Viewers took to social media to express their horror. Adding to the controversy is the fact that the scene wasn't even part of the original book series, the original canon. The director himself actually said that the idea came from George R.R. Martin himself. So technically it was not part of fictional canon, but that's an entire debate for another day. But Martin suggested that the scene itself could appear in the context of future novels. You know, the ones he has not written yet. Sorry guys, I'm not trying to be horrible. I should probably interrogate my own biases in this whole thing. I think I'm just pressed that he has not finished the series. But these boundaries are so complicated, and they definitely deserve our discussion.
We can't hide behind small mercies. The world we need won't be built by men loyal to the world we have.
The world we need is a world of mercy. It has to be.
And it will be.
The final season of Game of Thrones faced widespread criticism for its hurried pacing and abrupt resolution of major storylines built up over the 7 seasons. Among the recurring criticisms were Daenerys' rapid descent into villainy, the abruptness of Jaime and Cersei's deaths, and the perceived disappointment of Bran being crowned king. There are a great many more things we can discuss, but I think what stands out most to me is this idea of authorial autonomy. You can tell as a creative whatever story you want, and you can inject whatever disturbances and creative liberties into whatever story you want. In interrogation to my own biases, especially so in covering the show, I think I heard myself even more so though in my discussion of Euphoria, wanting there so desperately to be meaning in what was so disturbing. At least the utility in indulging in the disturbing or being exposed to the disturbing, not reaching the end of that utility in simply being disturbing. And I'm speaking specifically about me, I then attribute some immorality to the creator, because for their indulgence, I attribute, a selfishness, because every disturbance must have a subject to disturb. And so it could be a child, it could be a friend, it could be, an actor on set, but the point is there must be a subject, and that subject ultimately must have some vulnerabilities. It gives me a lot to think about, because it's framed a lot of my, a few years ago, temporary descent into nihilism. Because to concede to the idea of a creator, which obviously not everybody is going to do, meant to concede to something intelligent in the design of what mesmerizes us. And let's not lie, there are so many parts of human existence that we have no role in creating, that are in so many ways truly mesmerizing, breathtaking. Actually, I'm not even just talking about the visual side of things, even just music. Like, to me, of course there is an intelligent mind and strategy behind these appeals. Of course it's intelligent, it's brilliant. A creative has to be behind this. But in the same vein, there are obviously issues with that perspective, with my perspective. I look at the severity of certain disturbances, abuses, pain, and think either the divine creative, the director of the human existence of sorts, sees purpose in putting this into the narrative because it is integral to the storyline, or they're just like many a director, indulging. And there is no meaning or external significance to an injustice, an abuse, or a pain beyond the depth of that disturbance or indulgence that can be, pulled out of that traumatizing experience. Sorry, it's tough to think about, because I'm thinking about my own life, but that makes efforts to fix it, to fight for the vulnerable, to aspire for better, just as meaningless. It means your goodness means as little as your depravity, your selfishness. And as someone who has swallowed a lot of difficult pills in my life, as I'm sure a lot of you can actually relate to, I'm not wholly convinced that that is true. Are you? Thank you so much for listening. I hope to see you next time. Let me know your thoughts, your comments. Sorry for getting a little bit, a little bit much at the end of the video. It won't be frequent, don't worry. Clearly getting dark, that's why the lighting has changed so much during this video. But yeah, I hope to see you next time. You take care, and goodbye.